All right, and welcome into the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast. It is the Week 14 reaction episode. The sequel nobody asked for, Buymageddon 2, is now mostly behind us. I'm your host, Seth Woolcock, and I hope everyone was able to punch their tickets to the Fantasy Football Playoffs. As always, I am joined by the best sports medical professional on the internet, orthopedic surgeon, and the founder of Sports Med Analytics, Harvard-trained Stanford icon, the Dr. Deepak Chona. Happy Sunday night, Doc. Thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing great, man. There's no pressure when the Texans don't play, so I'm just out here enjoying the ride with you.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. You were busy as always. We'll talk some injuries with you in just a little bit. We're also joined by our fantasy sports and sports betting weapon here at Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, Scott Bogman. What's going on tonight, Boggs?
I mean, how about Jordan Addison? How about Zach Charbonnet? How about some of these guys pushing you into the playoffs? Big performances for sure. Josh Allen with 5 touchdowns. We had some huge ones. We also had some of the ancillary guys completely not show up during Buymageddon, which was annoying, but we will break it all down here. Excited to do it. Steelers win again, Seth. 10 wins. Let's go.
Over that win total for sure. Another winning season for Mike Tomlin. We've got a loaded program for y'all tonight. Injury recap with Deepak as noted, and then we'll break down all the 10 games from today. Big shout out to everyone who watches or listens to this episode each and every single week. Unreal to see how many people have been rocking and rolling with us as we head down the stretch of the season. If you are here on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy this type of content. Plus, subscribe to the channel if you are new. It is the easiest way to support what we're doing here at Fantasy Pros. And let's go ahead, boys. Let's jump into the injuries. Maybe no bigger one than Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back Bucky Irving, who exited with a back injury. The Oregon product has been looking like a potential league winner in the past few weeks, but only saw 5 touches today before aggravating a back injury. What do we know so far, Deepak?
Yeah, he came into this game very, very questionable and only practiced in limited fashion once. So we already knew he was dealing with what was probably a hip pointer and a back muscle strain. They kind of go along together. So the fact that he re-aggravated this early suggests they're going to have to give him a little bit of time. I suspect he's going to miss the first couple practices this week, and we're kind of going to be looking at the same type of process. A little bit more likely that he is held out now that he's had a re-aggravation, but really to be determined based on his practice status.
And if he is back in there as early as next week or potentially in week number 16, what is the re-injury risk on something like this, man?
Yeah, the re-injury risk is relatively high, especially because he already has had a re-injury. So it just kind of keeps adding on. The main thing with this is that usually running backs, when they play through these, see less touches. So just something to keep in mind if you're really banking on him.
Okay. Boggs, if there is no Bucky Irving active next week, where do you rank Rachaad White? And also, is Sean Tucker worth a look if you do roster Bucky?
I don't really think Sean Tucker is going to be too much worth a look. I mean, he would have been much more, for this week for Buymageddon, he would have been good. But Tampa Bay, they've got the Chargers next week. It's a tough matchup anyway. I kind of don't think Bucky is going to go. So I think it's going to be Rachaad White season. And, pretty easy to just go to him. He carried the full workload last year. He knows what to do. He did it in this game. So I think it's just an easy 1-to-1 if Bucky doesn't go.
Probably like a low-end RB1 next week, not looking at the matchup.
Yeah, the matchup is bad. So probably more of an RB2.
Okay. Sticking with the running back position here, Carolina Panthers rookie running back Jonathan Brooks. He suffered a non-contact leg injury. Deepak, what do you think happened to the rookie who just recently returned from a torn ACL that he suffered last year in Austin?
Yeah, the biggest concern here is that it's the same sort of direction and mechanism for an ACL re-tear. So with that kind of plus or minus meniscus, now the other possibility here is that when players come back from an injury, and especially younger players, the even sort of slight sensation that may be off could be enough to sort of give them a pause and make them just go down and call it. Mm-hmm. Now, with that being said, the mechanism does fit for an ACL return. That's my highest suspicion, but hoping we're wrong here. We're going to probably see a little bit more detail after an MRI tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Well, T's and P's out to Jonathan Brooks. Been a tough start to his NFL career. Boggs, if this is a torn ACL, what does this do for Brooks's dynasty value? And as a result, Chuba Hubbard, who's just giving a new contract as well the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it tanks Brooks, unfortunately, because this old scouting saying is availability is the best ability. And this guy missed most of this year. And if this is a tear this late in the season into December, it's going to miss a big chunk of next year, it would seem. Hopefully this isn't as bad. Hopefully this is a little bit of panicky after all that rehab and all that stuff, as Deepak kind of alluded to there. But we're going to find out pretty quick. So hopefully Brooks is okay. Like you said, T's and P's.
Absolutely. Going to the Saints, New Orleans quarterback Derek Carr, he exited with an arm and head injury. Injuries have been piling up in New Orleans all year long. Do we have any idea what happened to Carr here, Deepak?
Yeah, when he landed, he both hit his head and landed directly on his hand. So starting with the head, the likelihood that he ends up in concussion protocol, I would say is sort of non-zero. It sounds like they still hadn't made a determination on that as of our latest press conference. But with that being said, that may be irrelevant because his hand, if they're saying suspecting a fracture, usually they see that on the x-ray right after. So they probably would shut him down for the rest of the season if that's the case.
Would this linger into next year, or could he get back to throwing in a couple months here, you think, Deepak?
I think he could get back to throwing. I think you're probably looking at probably around the 4-month timeline, but
okay.
But that would be if this was his throwing hand. This is his left hand. So that actually works a little bit in his favor, that I would expect him to be able to get pretty much back to full strength after a whole off season.
Okay. Boggs, if Carr is sidelined for the rest of season, can you start anyone other than Alvin Kamara in this offense? We have been getting production from guys like MVS. Jawan Johnson had a nice game today as well.
Yeah, I don't want to. If it's just Kamara, honestly. Like Carr, we've seen this. He went out. We saw Hainer, we saw Rattler. They just don't have much to offer. It'll be Hainer right now, it looks like. So just not good for the Saints' health as a team as a whole. But it's kind of, this is what it's been coming down to for them. It's been a war of attrition, and they are losing.
Yeah, hopefully they can maybe rebuild after this season. I wouldn't be opposed to them, maybe trading back even and getting some like Jalen Milroe in the draft. Maybe if they want to get a more typical pocket passer, Drew Allar. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, much more in the offseason, but difficult to trust the Saints moving forward outside of Alvin Kamara. Looking at some more injuries this week, Deepak, we have Aiden O'Connell who left with a leg injury. I've been seeing a lot of mixed reporting on the former Boilermaker. What's your initial diagnosis of the injury here?
Yeah, it's a little unclear. He fell directly on the knee, and that's kind of a PCL mechanism in terms of the most common thing we see. But he was put in an air cast, which is a little atypical. So we'll kind of be waiting on reports on this. The early comments suggest it's not looking great. So I suspect he's going to be probably out for the rest of the year, given their status as a team.
Oh, Boggs, would Desmond Ridder starting change your weekly ranking of either Brock Bowers or Jacoby Myers?
Yeah, it would lower both of them. Ridder has been awful. So they have Carter Bradley on the practice squad right now, I guess. So, the pride of South Alabama, I guess we'll see. But yeah, it's bad. We're getting late in the season. There's not even 32 viable NFL quarterbacks in the NFL, right? So to get so many of these backups in the late really tanks the value of some of these players. I do think Bowers is somewhat QB proof. I think Myers is your best option there, but they are going to take hits in my rankings and most likely everyone's rankings because Ridder has just been not a good quarterback.
Yeah, talk about a team that also needs to rebuild and go after the quarterback in the draft. Just as Aiden O'Connell was getting it together, he might be out for the rest of the season. Deepak is telling us T's and P's up to him as well. George Pickens, inactive with a hamstring injury for the Steelers. Reports indicated that he tweaked it in practice on Friday. Deepak, should we expect him back next week in Philadelphia, or is this maybe a wait and see and maybe he's active week 16 against the Baltimore Ravens?
So I would lean towards him playing this coming week. And the reason for that is he did sustain the hamstring injury late this week. It's very common for people to sit out that coming game because the re-injury risk is pretty high, especially for a wide receiver with this injury. Now, the other sort of aspect to it is that we know it's mild because otherwise they wouldn't have even tested him today. And quotes from everybody else on the team seem to think that he was going to play going into this. So I suspect he's going to be out there. The re-injury risk is elevated, somewhere around 15%, but the production dip is pretty low. So I would expect a pretty good Pickens probably this week.
Okay, Boggs, if he's out there next week, wheels up on Pickens.
Yeah, and I think if you're the Steelers and he gets this injury right before you play the Browns, who have 3 wins, they did beat you last time, right? But you have this gauntlet of Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City, all in 10 days here. So it's just a brutal schedule for Pittsburgh coming up. They're going to play on this Sunday, and then they're going to play on a Saturday, and then on Christmas Day on Wednesday. So it's whatever it is, 10, 11 days. One of the hardest parts of the schedule that I've ever seen for a team. So I think this is just let's not play him. We may not need him to beat Cleveland. Let's hold him out for these 3 games.
Okay. Before we let you go, Deepak, we saw Will Levis struggle today. Was that related at all to the shoulder injury he suffered towards the end of the first half today?
I do think so. And his comments kind of more or less confirmed it in my eyes. He landed directly on the tip of his right shoulder. That's how you injure your AC joint. And he had actually done that back several weeks ago, and he missed some time as well during that. So this was probably re-injured. He did take an injection at halftime and was able to play through. Now, these sometimes swell up. They sometimes get worse. I wouldn't say a shoo-in for next week, although most commonly players do play with an injection. The one kind of variable here is that if you notice on a lot of his throws, he was kind of pushing the ball rather than truly following through. And that following through and going across your body is where you feel that AC joint. So I would say he's maybe not quite himself, but I think he is probably going to try to play.
Okay. Boggs, do you downgrade either Calvin Ridley or Nick Westbrook-Akine next week against the Bengals with either a banged up Will Levis or Mason Rudolph, who just a year ago, I remember I was sitting at Permane Brothers enjoying a cold Busch Light, seeing him tear up the Bengals, Mason Rudolph, that is. So with either of those quarterbacks, either an unhealthy Will Levis or Mason Rudolph, who's just, mid, where you downgrading these guys?
I can't downgrade these guys too much going up against Cincy. We've seen Cincy just play some horrific defense recently. We'll see if they can improve against, a banged up and weak Cowboys offense on Monday night. But I think if Will Levis is good enough to go, or if it's Mason Rudolph, that's a coin flip difference. This is not going from Carr to Hainer or from even Aiden O'Connell to Desmond Ridder. You know what I mean? This is a lateral move one way or the other. So I'm not going to downgrade those guys specifically in a good matchup next week.
Okay. Before we say goodbye to you, Deepak, we just saw Isaac Guerendo just moments ago leave the game early. I know this just happened, but what's your reporting on it?
Yeah, so they called him questionable with a foot injury. Now, the fact that he didn't come back, I'm not sure how much we can read into because they were leading comfortably and it was late. The good thing here potentially is that they didn't rule him out. And if they took him to the locker room, usually you get x-rays. So it suggests there's not a fracture there. Probably we'll get an MRI and get a little bit more info. But this one's going to be very much kind of played by practice reports as we go on.
Okay. Boggs, if you're in your fantasy football playoffs, if you have Guerendo, if you had McCaffrey or Jordan Mason, is it Patrick Taylor season? Are we spending the rest of our fab on him?
It's definitely Patrick Taylor season. And also they just picked up Abanikanda, your boy from Pitt. So maybe there's a little something there as well. But I would just like to ask whoever put a hex on Niners running backs, can it be over now? Does it have to go the whole season? Let's just stop it here. It's week 14. We're coming into the playoffs. No more broken San Francisco RBs, please. Yeah. I just burned out one of my fabs to get Guerendo. So hopefully he can play next week. Fingers crossed. We'll see.
It was so crazy in all my leagues, just seeing everyone throw out all the fab they had for Guerendo this past week.
They're even talking about it. This was his second start since college. He started one game in college and then this game. He doesn't have a lot of starts under his belt at all. So, yeah, I mean, we're down to the bottom of the barrel in San Francisco right now.
100%. But that's why we follow guys like Deepak to keep us up to date every single week. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck to you the rest of the way here. And good luck to you in the start of your fantasy football playoffs as well, Deepak.
Thank you. I will see y'all soon.
Yep, we'll catch up with Deepak here soon. Hang with us, guys, and we'll get started with some game recaps right after this.
Have you ever felt like you're just guessing when you're placing a bet? Look, we've all been there, hoping for that big win, but lacking the confidence to back our picks. But what if I told you that you could turn those hunches into winning strategies? Betting Pros will transform you from the casual bettor into a betting pro. First up, meet the Prop Bet Cheat Sheet and Prop Bet Analyzer. Sync your fantasy league with Betting Pros by signing into your FantasyPros account and review your players' weekly props with all the historical data right at your fingertips, and you'll be able to make confident over-under decisions. You'll be ready to dominate all those prize picks and underdog pick'em leagues with our exclusive prop projections and correlated picks that will empower you to build data-driven pick'em parlays. Say goodbye to the guesswork and hello to strategic betting. And if you have a gut feeling about a player or a team's performance, with our betting systems and our system builder, you can turn that intuition into a profitable system. Create your own betting system for free and receive ongoing bets that match your criteria all season long. This all sounds great, right? The best part, though, is that you can get a free trial of Betting Pros Premium right now. If you've never had Betting Pros Premium, just head over to bettingpros.com/apps and download the Betting Pros sports betting app and activate your free trial on the upgrade screen. Start your journey to becoming a true betting pro today.
All right. I'm seeing all the reactions in the chat. We got IMD saying beginner's luck, his first fantasy season ever. Congratulations to you, man. Hope you're having a great season. And a lot of people asking, can I drop Kyle Pitts? Am I giving up on this player? Disaster for me this week. It was a tough one out there, Bogman. How did you do in your leagues? Did you do any good?
I did not have a great week, which is I've been having a great season. So most of my teams are in the playoffs, which is, just a blessing here. But this week was not very good for me. I had a couple spots. I have Jordan Addison in 3 spots. I'm actually going to lose one of them where I have Jordan Addison, which is unbelievable.
No.
But unless Patrick Mahomes throws for like 500 yards tonight, I'm probably dead in the water in that one. So, look, at this point in the year, if you're saying, can I give up? You can give up on anybody. We got 3 weeks left. It is win and survive. It is, there is no, there's no excuses. So everyone can get cut. Everyone can be gone. If they're hurt, if you're not starting them, whatever you need to do to give yourself options and to keep yourself alive. This is no loyalty season right now. This is the playoffs. We are moving forward and we are doing what has to be done, even if we have to hold our nose to do it.
And sometimes the best move you can make is dropping a player that maybe your opponent would like a Kyle Pitts, and they see the name, and then it's a landmine, right?
Fox the River just said that. Drop Debo as a waiver wire landmine. You make somebody else spend their money and pick him up, and then they start him. Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea at all in some scenarios. God, Debo, just whatever magic is gone. Whoever is hexing the Niners running backs also has the same voodoo doll for Debo right now. It is not good for him.
100%. It was a tough week for me too. There was a couple super flex leagues where I'm starting Mac Jones as my only quarterback because all mine are on bye. But we'll get back. Week 14 was a tough one for everyone. But
I started Ray Davis over Ty Johnson in the league. Woo. So, and Ty scores the touchdown. Just the way she goes sometimes.
Absolutely. Let's start the game recaps in Miami, where the Dolphins, they beat the Jets 32-26 in overtime. The Jets did put up over 200 yards of offense without Breece Hall, but Miami did drive down the field on the first drive of overtime to win the game. 18 total penalties on the game. No turnovers, though. I got a lot of questions this week in my DMs about Braylon Allen, but ultimately it was Isaiah Davis who scored 15.7 PPR points. Allen, though, didn't leave you hanging, 12.1. Boggs, what did you make of this Breece Hall-less Jets backfield?
They split it right down the middle, man. I mean, it was really right down the middle. It was 11 carries for Allen, 10 for Davis. It was 4 catches for Allen, 3 for Davis. The snaps were split 37-36. Allen ran 22 routes. Davis ran 20. So it was literally split right down the middle
Mhm.
between these guys. Isaiah Davis was the guy to end up in the end zone. And this was, I had a lot of crow eating on Braylon Allen to start the year. I was not the biggest Braylon Allen guy. I thought he's a little bit too slow to exist in the NFL. I thought Isaiah Davis was better than him. Now it's looking like Isaiah Davis is making a name for himself, pulling himself even. He played with Breece banged up last week and has scored in back-to-back games now. So
almost had another one too. He dropped that reception that he had in the end zone.
yeah, he's a good back, went to a small school, so he kind of got overlooked a little bit. Decent combine. But both these guys are going to get mixed in should Breece miss again. Hopefully he doesn't,
Right.
because that is at Jacksonville. That is a very, very good matchup for the Jets next week. And then they have the Raiders, and then they're at Buffalo for their playoff schedule. But hopefully Breece is back.
Mhm.
But I think Isaiah Davis is a guy, if you're in a deep league, you got injuries, obviously no Bumageddon anymore, thank God.
Yes.
But, if you're down to the nitty gritty, he's a guy that could get you a touchdown. And sometimes that's the difference in a week.
Probably like a high-end RB3, you think, if there is no Breece Hall for both of these guys, probably ranked somewhere between 25 and 30. Is that probably where you'd have them?
I think probably a little bit lower than that still,
Okay.
because we get all 32 next week. So we're going to get,
Sure. Sure.
6 teams back, 6 RBs back. So I think he'll probably be closer to a low-end RB3, but in that neighborhood, he's definitely on the radar. That's for sure.
We also saw some huge games for Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams against a pretty decent Miami secondary. Garrett Wilson, 10 targets, 7 receptions, 114 yards. Devontae Adams, 11 targets, 9 receptions, 109 yards, and a touchdown. Can we expect something similar next week against Jacksonville and then the Rams and the Bills for the Jets rest of the season here?
Better late than never, I guess. So, yeah, we'll take it. I mean, as long as Aaron Rodgers doesn't quit and go rogue, which, I kind of feel, he's even said, I want to play the whole year and all that. So we're going to take him at his word for now. So, that's a great matchup against Jacksonville next week. So both these guys looking good. And like I said, better late than never. We finally have had it with both these guys. And I think that's Devontae's first 100-yard game as a member of the Jets too. So I was kind of like, I don't know who's going to be good here because it's been one or the other.
Yeah.
So I put them next to each other. So I guess it worked out.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And I think like they're pretty much auto starts next week again against Jacksonville. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to get them in your lineup most likely. So
on the Dolphins side of things, we finally saw Tyreek and Jalen Waddle both go off in the same game. Feels like the first time in a long time. Tyreek Hill, 14 targets, 10 receptions, 115 yards, and a score. Waddle saw 12 targets of his own, 9 receptions, and 100 yards. FantasyPros strength of schedule tool gives them a top 10 easiest rest of season schedule for wide receivers. Is this finally the breakout we've been waiting for these Miami wide receivers that, hey, if you drafted them at ADP, tough season?
The theme of this show is better late than never, or this game at least, I guess, is better late than never. So, yeah, we'll take it. I was, I was a little bit worried about this risk in the rest of the season for Tyreek earlier. 10 for 115 and a touchdown shows you he is just not slowing down. And we had even seen the memes, right, of Tyreek Hill, more children than touchdowns this season, all of that. So, luckily, he's at least pulled even with this score. So, but yeah, it's nice to see these guys working together. Achan went out for a little bit, a little scary, came back. We didn't even need to talk about him on the injury report because he had, 60 of 72 snaps. Running back went to Achan.
Yeah, no
Mostert.
Yeah,
he is the lead back there with no Mostert by a wide margin.
Yeah, Jalen Wright still got a little bit of work to do as well. He seems to somewhat just get in the mix of some bad situations out there, drop passes, not always great in pass blocking as well. So still a little bit of work to do for the rookie out of Tennessee. I like Miami rest of the season. Houston, San Francisco, Cleveland, none of those matchups necessarily scare me away, Bogman. I also have a 2-1 ticket that I took a couple weeks back on Miami to make the playoffs. Not feeling great about that, but feeling good about these options, I think, rest of the way.
Yeah, I think these should be close games for them, even at Cleveland. That late in the season, we know Miami's track record playing in cold weather is not outstanding. Yeah. So not great for them there. But Houston is probably their toughest matchup. The Niners are so banged up. I question whether they can keep up with them on offense, but they look great today. So I was kind of worried about the health of that Niners offense and Purdy and Guerendo really shut me up. So hopefully Guerendo's back for them and they can keep it rolling.
Moving to Minneapolis, it wasn't the revenge game Kirk Cousins won in by any means. The Vikings win this one 42-21 against the Falcons. Sam Darnold, 5 touchdowns, 347 yards passing. That led to 39.3 fantasy points for Jordan Addison, 32.7 for Jay Jettis. Boggs, who impressed you most in Minnesota today?
I mean, I tell you what, you impressed me a couple weeks ago because you pointed out the correlation of Hawkinson being back with Addison going nuts. And that is exactly what has been happening. It continues to happen. And Jordan Addison is in his breakout right now. I mean, I've said it ad nauseum, so I'm sure people roll their eyes. This dude got Kenny Pickett drafted in the first round. Yeah. Jordan Addison did. So outstanding wide receiver. He's got Jefferson on the other side, and it all added up to a beatdown by the Vikings. I thought Kirk Cousins revenge game narrative. I mean, even Jerry Jeudy got the revenge game narrative going on.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we'd see a little magic for that, but he's just been too careless with the football recently. 2 more picks here after a bunch last week. He just has not looked good. I mean, once they are officially dropped, might see Michael Penix get a little bit of a run. So we'll see what happens there. But great game from Darnold and his 5 touchdowns, and everyone's kind of counted him out because, it had been, after 4 weeks, he turns into a pumpkin, and he definitely slowed down from the beginning of the season, but he's starting to pick it back up. And it's just trusting your guys. Just throw the ball up. Let Addison go make a play. Let Jefferson go make a play. Hawkinson. They have such good options here that, I mean, Darnold is in his bag right now. We like it.
Do you have to start Addison rest of season giving this performance? Chicago, Seattle, Green Bay, the matchups for him.
Yeah, though I don't know that he is an absolute must start, but I'm going to say it's hard to sit him when he is on a heater like this. So, like, if your decision is Waddle or Addison, that one's tough, right? That's kind of, you're getting into coin flipping, but he's definitely a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 borderline guy moving forward. He has been outstanding recently.
Not a game that Kirk Cousins, I think, was excited about at all after what he did here, but it was still a big game for most of the Atlanta skill players. I want to specifically highlight Ray McLeod, though. 8 of 98 on 11 targets. Earlier this week, I talked about McLeod as my favorite waivers a week early target, and I think it's coming to fruition. Boggs, we knew him a few years ago back on the Steelers as kind of a gadget player, punt
special
returner.
Teams guy.
Yeah. But he's really turned into something. Do you think he is worth a spot start if you need someone in the fantasy football playoffs? And with that being said, are we cool with dumping Kyle Pitts? Because, I mean, he's getting now targeted by Mooney, by Ray now. I mean, it's just bad.
Everything you thought you were getting from Kyle Pitts is going to Ray McLeod right now. So why even bother with Kyle Pitts? There are plenty of tight ends that will disappoint you. So I would at least try a different one in a good matchup or something, then keep sticking with Kyle Pitts. Yeah. I started him in a league because I'm stupid. It's 16 man and there's just nobody. I mean, the backups. I think Nick Vanette was the best tight end on the wire, right? So I'm like, I guess I'll roll Kyle Pitts, but unless you're in that situation, he can go. He's doing nothing right now. It's tough to say in Dynasty. He is still super talented and all that. But at this point, you would think the Falcons aren't even using him. He's not getting targets. Maybe they trade him in the offseason. It is not working for Kyle Pitts. So, he can be cast asunder for sure. Ray is a great option, I think, if you're in a deeper league. Again, all 32 teams playing next week. It's going to be hard to say that, he's a must start, but he's definitely going to be in the mix. You're going to look at matchups for him versus the guys in your flex at your 3rd wide receiver position. And, a lot of eyebrows are getting peaked, at least right now, I guess is what we should say.
Yeah, we got the Raiders, the Giants, and Washington for Atlanta the rest of the way. I mean, that's a great schedule too. Yeah. So Ray, I would say firmly in that flex conversation, specifically in 12-team or deeper leagues. And I just got to say, I don't want to rag on the guy too hard, but there's just a chance that we all overvalued Kyle Pitts coming out of Florida, man. Like, Brock Bowers has been the real deal this year. I know Pitts had a 1,000-yard season to start his career, but I think we were just all too high on Pitts. Like, we can't keep making excuses. Like the quarterback play is better. It's not great, but it's better. the offensive play calling is better. And I mean, you're looking at what Jonnu Smith did last year, and I think a lot of people owe Arthur Smith a little bit of an apology now, considering what he's doing in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, so I think what we're seeing here is a combination of a bunch of things. Tight end is just one of the hardest positions to come out of college and then successfully make the transition to the NFL, because you just have so much more to learn. Now we do get specialized tight ends like Isaiah Likely and Zach Ertz and these guys that aren't doing, a ton of inline blocking. They're more to be more there to be wide receivers. And then you have David Njoku, who has all the talent in the world, but that team's a run first team. They want him to block. So you're seeing a little bit of that from Kyle Pitts, of course, but I think you're right. I think he was definitely overrated. It was one really huge season at Florida. And I mean, he was amazing, but it just nothing has shown up. So I'm definitely one of the lots of people that thought Kyle Pitts was going to be very good, and he has been nothing.
Well, I did too, man. And last year I got out of him in my big dynasty league. I traded him for a first round pick and Travis Kelce in a win now situation. I'm feeling pretty good about that. And, I don't think you're going to be able to get that type of return on him, but maybe there's still going to be someone in every single dynasty league, I would say, who's going to still believe in the talent. So
take a flyer, especially if he gets moved. Yeah.
In Philly, the Birds, they get the W 22-16 over the Carolina Panthers, but the Panthers continue to cover some big spreads, and Adam Thielen continues to be a weapon. As it tracks now, he could finish as a wide receiver 1 in back-to-back weeks. However, not the best rest of season schedule for the Panthers. On a scale of the 1 to 5, let's call it a playoff trustometer. How much are you trusting Thielen moving forward? Because we did see similar results last year with Bryce Young at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, my initial thought was 2.5, which does nothing for us. I'll say 3. Okay. I'll say 3 out of 5. We trust him because I think what we can trust a little bit more, I'm not fully on board, but is that Bryce Young is a better quarterback than the first run that we saw. And so he's at least, he's not going to Desmond Ridder this. He's not going to be the guy he was before that is just going to wreck this entire offense and drag everybody down with him. So with that being said, matchups are nice, and we still expect the Panthers to be losing and playing comeback in most games. So that's good game script for these wide receivers, including Adam Thielen. So Welsh couldn't convince me last week. I think I have now been convinced on Adam Thielen. I just feel like this late in his career, every time you start to depend on him, he pulls a hamstring or something. Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, he's been great. Bryce Young has been much improved. It sucks to lose Brooks, but Chuba has still been a very solid piece, and this offense is getting much, much better. So yeah, I think that I think you can count on Adam Thielen for the most part.
Probably like a wide receiver 3 flex in your rankings. What it's probably going to shake out to. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where he's going to end up being. And, a lot of targets, a lot of catches. The guy is still making catches for sure.
Yeah, Leggett also had 8 targets, which was really nice to see, but just 2 for 39. I think he's still a guy I have hope for dynasty situations, but for rest of season redraft, I think I'm okay with cutting Leggett just because he doesn't have any standout performances with extremely high upside, and the floor just doesn't seem to be there right now either.
Yeah, and it's just, this is the nature of the beast for a rookie, right? Like sometimes they come in and shatter things, and sometimes it's a feeling out process, a growing process. They switch quarterbacks with him a couple times here as well. He had Thielen in there. He didn't have Thielen in there. Sanders has been in and out of the lineup. So there's just been a lot of moving pieces to Carolina. So Leggett just has not, it seems like he's settling in, and then he's not. Yeah. So 8 targets is nice. So I don't know that he's a definite cut in a deeper league, but for the most part, in a 10 to 12, there's probably someone on the wire that's a little bit better.
Anything on the Eagles side of note for fantasy football purposes for you? Devonta Smith, he found the end zone in his return. Saquon did go over 100 yards, but overall, pretty disappointing day for all Eagles players outside of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, they just didn't need to do a lot, honestly. So it was just play defense and not choke away this game, especially for whoever that dude was. I bet $3 million on him. But I think the one thing you can pull away from Philly is with Goddard being out for a little bit. Calcaterra scored a touchdown, going to be a touchdown dependent guy, but at least he's getting looks and targets. So
rather play him than Pitts.
I would rather have him than Pitts, man. That's exactly what I was going to say. Maybe you had Taysom Hill go down. There's lots of other options, but Calcaterra is in one of the healthiest offenses and gets end zone looks. So we like to see that.
We got our guy Richard in the chat asking if we think Guerendo's okay. We talked about that earlier in the episode, man, with Deepak. So you can go ahead and flash back to that, and he can give better analysis than I think Boggs and I can on the medical front. But appreciate hanging out with us tonight, Richard. Let's keep it moving. But before we do, I did want to remind everyone that if you want a chance to win a signed Jackson Smith-Njigba Seahawks helmet for free, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com, all you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either A, download the Fantasy Pros My Playbook app, B, leave a review for this podcast, or C, follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you're going to receive. We will be announcing a winner right here on the podcast. So if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize if you are that lucky winner. All right. And maybe in the least happy place on earth, let's head to MetLife Stadium where the Saints beat the Giants 14-11. Had the under in this game. Wasn't sweating this one. So yeah, was feeling pretty good about that. For the Saints, Bogman, Alvin Kamara, we already kind of touched on this. He got double-digit points thanks to his receiving work. Kendre Miller found the end zone on 10 carries as well, which was good to see. I don't know if you saw the memes going out there on Twitter about him without Dennis Allen, but there's
I didn't see any of them, but all Dennis Allen wanted to do was talk smack about Kendre Miller in every press conference. I don't know when he's going to be available.
Yeah.
Is he still hurt? We need guys that are going to play, all of that. So now that the witch is dead, this guy finally got some carries here. So we like to see that.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if you saw the new Deadpool and Wolverine, but it was Taysom trying to think who the actor even was, but Channing Tatum. It was his character, and he's like, I'm gonna make a name for myself here now that there's no Dennis. And
then did the Wolverine say, I don't think you make it out of this alive, because that's been Kendre Miller's history here.
Yes.
My God.
But realistically, like Jawan Johnson found the end zone, but we kind of touched on it. You're not starting anyone but Alvin Kamara in this offense, especially without Derek Carr probably going forward. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, if all the pieces were healthy for New Orleans and we had Taysom, we had Olave, and everything was humming like it was those first 2 weeks, but it was, I hope you enjoyed your first 2 weeks, New Orleans, because it's been pretty ugly outside of that. Now, you win this game against an even uglier team. I looked at one point and I was like, Drew Lock has not completed a pass.
He was like 0 for 8 or 0 for 10 starting out. It was not good.
It was unbelievably bad. And I was like, man, I thought Malik Neighbors was going to be QB proof. He ended up kind of being QB proof, but good Lord, Drew Lock with an unbelievably horrible start.
Yeah, Neighbors, he did get double-digit fantasy points, 5 for 79 on 10 targets, but he still hasn't gone over 16 fantasy points since week 4, hasn't found the end zone since week 3. Tyrone Tracy, he continues to be a weapon, though, 19.3 fantasy points for him. 1 through 5, let's go back to the playoff confident meter. Where you putting Neighbors and Tracy rest of the season? Baltimore, Atlanta, Indianapolis are their matchups, so great schedule, but as you noted, Drew Lock 21 for 49 today.
Yeah, it's still a 4 for those guys.
Okay.
I mean, Tracy gets just all of the touches. 65 of 78 snaps went to Tracy in this game, and he had 21 touches and scored. Same thing with Neighbors. Neighbors played 77 or 73 of 78 snaps, so all but 5. He still had 10 targets, right? So or I'm sorry, that was I think Wandale had, or no, yeah, Neighbors had 10 targets. Wandale had 11. So they're both getting targets. They both should be playing from down for the rest of the season. And Drew Lock is bad, but once he gets going, he can get into a little bit of a rhythm, and he did in this game. So made it stomachable, I would say. From what it did start as. So yeah. I don't like the team. I don't like the health of the offense, but the players are just getting too much action.
And if you enjoyed that game, Saints versus Giants, you're going to love Jaguars versus Titans. Jacksonville potentially took themselves out of position for that first overall pick, winning 10-6. Brian Thomas Jr. got his 12 targets, 8 receptions, 86 yards from Mr. Mac Jones. Travis Etienne, He also got to double-digit points, but that was because he caught 4 receptions for 50 yards. He was outsnapped, though, by Tank Bigsby, 31-28, out-carried 18-4. Expectations have been low for quite some time, I would say, Bogman. People haven't been trusting him for the majority of the season. But is it Joe over for the Clemson product being the lead back and even startable in fantasy rest of the season?
Yeah, I think so, because even with, the split backfield, as you mentioned, 31 to Bigsby, 28 for ATN, it was still Bigsby getting all of the rushes, right? 18 carries for him for 55 yards and a score. ETN had 4. He had more targets and he had 50 yards receiving, but, it's just less bankable on a week-to-week basis. We think Bigsby is the goal line guy. ETN is just, he's used as the receiving back now, and it's just not a good role to have to start moving forward. If you wanted him as a bye week back, great. If you're in a super deep league, he's still on the field at least, but everything's going to Bigsby. Bigsby has to be the guy here. The real thing is you don't really want to start anyone with Mac Jones as a quarterback for Jacksonville. It has been rough there with him as a starter, and we had an okay game from Brian Thomas, but nobody else did anything. Ingram, 4 for 33. Parker Washington, who had been on a nice hot streak, 2 for 15. Yeah. So it's Brian Thomas. It's maybe Bigsby. Even Evan Ingram is a tough start right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the Titans, kind of a similar situation. We talked about Will Levis and his injury earlier in the program with Deepak. Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, they got double-digit fantasy points once again, but it feels like it's only been them and the occasional NWI spot start for a while now. I think that's probably the same like rest of the season. Like if you want to get frisky, you want to roll the dice, start NWI, and aside from that, it's Ridley and Pollard.
Yeah, I like the schedule for the rest of the year for Pollard and Ridley, right? Because it's Tennessee gets Cincinnati, then they're at Indy, and they're at Jacksonville. Yeah. So nice playoff schedule here for those guys. Nick Westbrook-Akina is obviously touchdown dependent. Didn't get a touchdown this week, so didn't help me in Buymageddon. The 1 week he doesn't score a touchdown is when I really need him. Right. But such is life in fantasy football. So just the way it goes. But yeah, I do like Ridley getting a bunch of targets. I do like Pollard. I thought this was going to be more 50-50, and it was a little more even, 40-24 in snaps, and Spears ran more routes. So he is back to being kind of the full-time receiving back here that he was before the concussion. But Pollard is too hot. They said they're going to go hot hand. Pollard is hot right now. I expect him to continue to get the football.
In Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers rolled 28-13 against the Raiders. Baker Mayfield continues his quarterback one season, going for 19 more fantasy points today. His pass catchers all got at least to double-digit fantasy points. No big games by any means, but Jalen McMillan might be the real story here, Bogman. He led the team in targets and found the end zone twice. Can we trust the rookie out of Washington? It has been a slow start to his career, to say the least, and we saw Evans go down. We saw Chris Godwin. We were thinking McMillan would be the guy. He himself got banged up, was never really that person we thought he was. I dropped him in a league this last week, finally. But bottom 12 strength of schedule, rest of the season for wide receivers. So not the greatest matchups either. Are you rolling out McMillan, or is it more just a good week 14 story we can rest our head on?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see him put something on tape going into next year. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would like to see him get more. He's played a bunch of snaps since coming back off the injury. So he's out there. The opportunities are going to be there for him. So I do like that. I don't mind having him on the bench, if we're looking. But you can't start him off of one good game with 2 scores, right? Like, expecting that is madness, I feel like. So it's great that he's out there. He's out there so much. This can be a thing. McMillan can definitely be a thing. He can be a guy that wins you money down the stretch if you find yourself in a spot where you need to play him. I just don't think I'm not going to bump him up a crazy amount. I'm going to put him where a lot of these guys who get a bunch of, Justin Watsons, these guys get a bunch of snaps, but they're mainly blocking, or they're mainly out there, taking a defender away so Mike Evans can make the catch, so Rashad White and Bucky can make catches underneath. You know what I mean? That has been his role for most of the year. He was open in this game, so he got 2 scores. Nice to see. I hope we're building on something here, but definitely nowhere near a for sure asset on our team.
Yeah, I think you're in a deeper league. I could see you Adam McMillan. He is available in 91% of ESPN leagues. So I don't think you should be missing out on using our waiver assistant tool at fantasypros.com/myplaybook to just weigh the options with McMillan. Should I add him? Should I not? Is he going to be a difference maker in my lineup moving forward? That's what this tool tells you. So make sure you're checking it out. Again, that's our waiver assistant tool at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the Fantasy Football My Playbook app. You can instantly view suggestions on who you should add, who you should drop. You'll kind of see, hey, is McMillan really worth it here? Or is he just someone who's going to ride my pine rest of the way? That assistant tool will really help you. So make sure you guys are checking it out. For the Raiders in this matchup, I did want to talk about Sincere McCormick. He outsnapped Amir Abdullah. And
I started Amir Abdullah in 2 spots.
Same.
I have too many 16-man leagues. So he got 1 carry for 1 yard or whatever it was. Yeah, very upsetting.
10.9 points for McCormick here. What do you make of this? Because we already touched on Brock Bowers and moving down Jacoby Myers in our rankings if Connell is going to be out long term. Do you like Sincere McCormick? Is he a guy we can throw in? Because I don't even know if we can, because Zamir White, Alexander Madison, they might return. Like, it just feels really messy.
Yeah, Sincere McCormick to me is a jag. You know what I mean? He's a guy that you hand the ball to. He's going to go get you. You need 3 yards, he'll go get you 3 yards.
Mm-hmm.
You need a yard, he'll get you 3 yards. You need 6 yards, he'll get you 3 yards. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I feel like he's not a game breaker. He's not a guy that is going to, do a ton, but if you give him 15 carries, he's going to wear you down. Stamina is the name of his game. This is what he did at UTSA, right? So, good player, but for the NFL, he's kind of a fill-in now. So I'd expect if Zamir was back, he would get a little bit more. Amir Abdullah has been a special teams guy for a long time. That's kind of how he's kept his, helmet for so long in his career going so long. And it seems like Antonio Pierce is making decisions at random recently. So, I don't understand why McCormick had so much more. He was fine in this game, which is good. But I just don't think I'm going to bank on that on a week-to-week basis, especially if some of those other guys come back.
Agreed. We got Mad Scientist in the chat saying, Seth, you gave me some advice a few weeks back and said if it helped you to thank you, and if not, you didn't recommend that person. I think that was DeMarcus Robinson. I actually recommended her, if I'm reminded. So he's saying he did lose, but if he wins this week, you're in the playoffs. Appreciate you, my Mad Scientist. Thanks for not coming for my head on that. And remember, I didn't say anything, Pogs. I didn't say anything that week.
No, of course not. I don't know. I didn't see it. I wasn't. Deny.
Let's talk about something we did see this week, Bogman. In the Berg, the Steelers win as favorites, beating the Browns 27-14. We talked about in the absence of George Pickens, kind of nerfed this whole Lurs offense, just 267 yards of total offense. We saw how important him stretching the field really can be. Will you be starting any Pittsburgh players if GP happens to not go next week against Philly? We know what Jalen Carter and those boys up front are doing, stuffing the run most weeks. We are expecting Pickens to be back as of now, is kind of what Deepak was telling us. But just, worst case scenario, he isn't. Are you kind of out on this entire Pittsburgh offense, or do you think you still roll Najee out?
It's tough. I mean, Najee, if you're touchdown dependent and hope he gets one, I mean, Warren is the better runner, but Warren cannot take a workload like Najee can. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, in this game, they were split. It was Warren with 34 snaps. He had 9 carries and 2 catches, so 11 touches. And Najee only had 27 snaps, and he had 18 carries. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
Najee is definitely the battering ram, and he will get his carries. But you're gonna hope, somebody slips and he carries a big one. His vision also isn't great. We know that from watching him for so long, Seth. Sometimes he picks the right route and lane, and sometimes he doesn't. So. But he's going to give you 100% on every carry. That's why we love Najee. But, yeah, it's going to be tough to start anybody but Pickens. I mean, Pat Freiermuth has been more involved. And he's kind of learning Russ kind of, to get open when Russ starts to move around. And Russ has been looking for him in those. So he's becoming just a little bit more dependable. Like I'd start him over Kyle Pitts. Even over, even against the Eagles here. But, yeah, not a lot to get excited in the matchup against Philly next week. It's a tough run for the Steelers. It's Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City. It's a tough run.
Baltimore would be a great matchup. Hopefully, though, for some of these weapons, if we can get the likes of Pickens back, I think that'll be a fun one. So excited for that. Anything else from this game for you? Jameis Winston continues to play Jameis Winston football, baby. 24 for 41, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. In this current
Keanu Benton getting a pick. I did not have that on my bingo card.
Oh man, yeah. This is not a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. I love Benton. That's a great pickup for us out of Wisconsin a few years back, and
he's a lot of fun. I'll tell you what, with Cleveland, getting back to it and not turning it into a Steelers podcast, we did see Jerome Ford just get a ton of snaps again, 40 and 23 routes. Chubb 26 and 12, and Chubb keeps getting his 11 to 15 carries for not many yards. So we saw Ford involved a little bit more. They got Kansas City next week. That's a tough matchup for any running back. So Ford is becoming way less dependable. Jerry Jeudy is becoming way more dependable. Got free and scored a touchdown early, which I thought Jameis was past the line, but apparently he wasn't. They didn't even look at it. Eli Moore is becoming more kind of dependent as well. And Njoku, 13 targets. They are slinging the ball with Winston, and they're going to be playing from down in most of these games as well. Not a good team, only 3 wins on the season. So, I think Winston has at least brought a lot of these pieces back, Jeudy and Njoku specifically, but I don't think Nick Chubb has it anymore. So I think it's going to be a tough call to start him in any scenario.
Are Jeudy and Njoku must start for rest of season? 17 fantasy points today for both of them. Njoku, as you allude to, 13 targets. After seeing 17 on Monday Night Football last week, he has 30 targets in 2 weeks, Bogman.
Yeah, I mean, and I think they said after last week's game, it was like 14% of his career yards were with Jameis Winston as his quarterback through 4 or 5 games or whatever it is. So, yeah, Jerry Jeudy and Winston have a connection. So he's definitely a must start. Njoku, yeah, I mean, if he's going to keep getting 13 targets, he's a must start for sure. So, yeah, they're going to keep slinging it. This is Winston's game. And, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. That's just how it goes. They beat Pittsburgh in the first game because Winston was connecting on those and not having terrible picks.
Right.
And then they lost the game against Denver because of the picks. They lost this game because of the turnovers as well. So this is what Winston is.
Let's move to Arizona, where the Seahawks, they get the win. They're starting to separate themselves in the division, 30-18 against the Cardinals. Really good day for Zach Charbonnet in the place of Ken Walker. 22 carries, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns, also 7 for 59 through the air. I mean, this is what we kind of thought Sharp could be in the NFL, right? Boggs coming out of UCLA, highly touted prospect, day 2 draft capital, but just went and, was always kind of behind Ken Walker. So I think Charbonnet's proving he's a must start down the stretch if Walker continues to miss time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if Walker misses time, you are starting Sharps. I mean, he is a great running back. And I was just so disappointed that he got drafted by Seattle because Ken Walker is one of the best running backs in the league, in my opinion. Now, he's had a lot of injury issues. So it was smart for them to get a guy like Sharps to back him up. But, yeah, I mean, this was, hey, look, Sharp is up. Let's give him all the touches, 29 touches for this dude, and he scores twice against a Cardinals defense that had been pretty good as of recently. So to see him run downhill was a ton of fun. And, I just don't, I think Walker's back next week. So are we going to see maybe more of a split because Charbonnet had such a good game?
We thought that before, though, right?
And it doesn't happen. Ken Walker's so good. So, yeah, it's just tough. And I know there are people complaining about Metcalf. Metcalf has been a disappointment for sure. I kind of put that more on Geno. I don't really like Geno, but it is what it is. JSN is getting everything right now. So, I mean, Seattle looking pretty solid, but Metcalf is becoming touchdown dependent, which is a bummer.
Yeah, so you can cut Tyler Lockett if you have him. He was blanked again today.
You shouldn't have him anymore.
Yeah,
he should
yeah.
have been gone a while ago.
Yeah, DK, like where do you think you're going to be ranking DK rest of the season? Because JSN, as you alluded to, he goes 5 for 82 and 1. He's been a low-end wide receiver 1 all season long. I think he'll stay in that weekly ranking mix for that top 12 discussion. But is DK more a top 24 guy now?
Yeah, low-end wide receiver 2, probably becoming more touchdown dependent and big play dependent. So the schedule for Seattle coming up is Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago. So lukewarm on that schedule. So yeah, I mean, Metcalf is becoming big play dependent. So there's some guys you're going to have some questions. Like, would you rather start Ridley against Jacksonville? Would you rather start DK Metcalf? I'm sure that's going to be a decision for some people. So we're getting to that time where I'm just, our loyalty is gone.
Oh yeah.
We're only starting the guys who we think are going to get us there. And Metcalf has been somewhat disappointing here.
Looking at Arizona, Kyler Murray, okay game for him, 25 for 38, 259 yards, 2 tutties, 2 interceptions. Didn't run as much as we would have liked. Big game for James Conner on the ground, 90 rushing yards. And then he also adds 4 for 32 and 1 through the air. So good to see a bounce back from him. Trey McBride continues to be peppered with targets, 14 targets, 7 for 70, is allergic to the end zone still. And Mara, 4 for 49. I know we're probably starting Connor rest of the way. We're starting Trey McBride for sure. Are we starting Kyler and are we starting Marvin Harrison Jr. rest of season? Bogman, Arizona, they'll be up against New England next week, and then Carolina, and then the Rams.
It's a good schedule. So I like the schedule against some of these weaker teams, especially, New England and Carolina, who don't have a ton to play for. So yeah, I do think that we're still starting Marv in a lot of scenarios here, but I completely understand if you just don't want to mess with Marv. I get it, but still got 8 targets. So he's still seeing a lot of targets. He's still one of the first looks. It's been a disappointing year again, such as the roller coaster with rookies in the NFL.
Right.
They're not all Puka Nacua. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're not all going to work out 100% every single time. So it's been a disappointing year. If he was drafted in the 4th round, it's been a great year for him. But being a top 10 pick and not producing like one is just disappointing. So definitely not worth what we paid for him this year. But it's tough to bench him. You have to be in one of those spots where you have really good options. And, if you have really good options, then bench him. But
Jerry, Judy, or Marv rest of the way?
I think I want Judy going with Winston right now. So, yeah.
Jordan Addison?
Probably Addison. Yeah. I mean, these are, these probably should be easier decisions for me. I know what Marv has in the bank. Yeah. He just has not been pulling it out at the NFL level yet.
2 more games to round us out, starting in Los Angeles, where the Rams beat the Bills in a high-scoring affair, 44-42. Josh Allen, 6 total touchdowns for our guy who I think he locked up the MVP this week, regardless of the result. 3 touchdowns through the air, 342 yards passing, 10 carries, 82 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdown. Bad game for James Cook because of that. Only 6 for 20 on the ground. Caught 2 receptions for 9 yards. Khalil Shakir showed up, 5 for 106 and 1. Great to see that. Amari Cooper back in the mix, which I believe it was Welsh who called a big Amari Cooper week coming. 6 for 95 on 14 targets. Matt Collins got in the act as well. How do we sort out this Buffalo offense as a whole rest of the way? We know James Cook probably an automatic start. I think Khalil Shakir has been there for a while. I guess it's more about Amari and these fringe guys.
Yeah, now that Amari has kind of a rapport going here, he's healthy. They're not playing in the snow. It's wheels up. I mean, Amari Cooper is still one of the better wide
receivers. Even with Keon Coleman potentially returning soon?
Even with Keon. I love Keon Coleman, but I don't care. Amari Cooper's the guy. 14 targets in this game. And you're going to start James Cook again. They're not going to get down as quickly as they did against most other teams, the rest of the way here. So they completely abandoned the run. I mean, they threw the ball 37 times and they ran it 17 times. So they didn't have the ball a lot to start. And then they just completely abandoned the run. So, I Cooper is up. Shakir is up. Obviously, you're still rolling Cook. You're still starting Josh Allen. I mean, he's amazing. 6 touchdowns is unbelievable. So
how many? I have to see how many fantasy points that. What is that? Is that a good? That's got to be 50, right? Did he hit 50?
I think so. 3 rushing and 3 passing and 300 yards. He had to, and 82 yards rushing. He had to have gone over 50. So
my goodness,
yeah,
my goodness,
just an unbelievable game for him. So yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about James Cook with a bad matchup, and to me, Amari Cooper is almost a must start.
51.9 fantasy points for Josh Allen. My goodness. Hopefully everyone who had him is winning this. What I want you to do is DM Boggs and I on Twitter if you're somehow losing with Josh Allen in your lineup. I just want to see what other mistakes were made.
Yeah, you started Amir Abdullah and all these other guys that scored no points. Kyle Pitts in there.
Ray Davis,
Right.
Looking at the Rams here, not a ton to note, I don't think, really, Bogman. We had Kyron Williams find the end zone twice again. That was really nice to see. 29 carries, 87 yards, and those 2 scores. Puka back in on the action, 12 for 162 and 1. Cooper Kupp, 5 for 92 and 1 as well. I mean, I think it's pretty much been these 3 guys and really nobody else from this team for quite some time. And I think that's the rest of the way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like the broadcast. Oh, Blake Corum trying to come in here and give Kyron Williams a little bit of a breather. 31 touches for Kyron in this one, 29 carries and 2 receptions. I mean, the dude is a workhorse. He's just unbelievable. And Corum had 8 carries for 34 yards, but Puka made some plays in this game where you're like, how does he do this? He's like he's almost on his back horizontal with the field, makes the catch, and then just lands on his back. Doesn't knock the wind out of him. Doesn't care. He's so young. I mean, it just doesn't matter to him. 12 for 162, and he ran one in. Just incredible weeks here. So, yeah, I mean, the Rams offense is healthy. They just put up a 44 on the Bills. So they're doing just fine.
Yeah, they're in the mix as well. It's going to be a tight race out there in the NFC West. I'm super intrigued to see if the Rams can get back in the mix or if this is the Seahawks division to lose. It'll be fun. And I think rest of the way, you got to feel good about the Rams. San Francisco, the Jets, Arizona, no one that's scaring me, I think, from a defensive perspective. So wheels up on all your Rams rest of season. And before we get to our final game, I did want to remind everyone to join our Fantasy Pros Discord community. You can chat with other fans and get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. Our schedule for the rest of the season, Joe, the Welsh, and Boggs, they are live in the Discord Mondays at 2 Eastern. And then the Welsh and Erickson are back on Thursdays at 2 Eastern. Worm and Fitz at 5 Eastern on the first Tuesday of each month. And then Fitz and Boggs at 5 Eastern on the third Tuesday of each month talking Dynasty. So come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com. Chat, again, come get your questions answered. Make sure you're tuning into those live AMAs every single week at fantasypros.com/chat. It's the best way to get access to everyone in our Fantasy Pros community. And let's round it out here in San Francisco, where the 49ers, they were feisty in this one. They got it done 38-13 against the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams still found 2 touchdowns. Didn't have a ton of yards in this one, 134 yards on just 23 attempts. Swift, bad day for him, I would say overall. He let managers down. Keenan Allen kind of flopped back to hit his, old ways as well. Roma Doomsday found the end zone twice. Like, what are we doing here with Chicago rest of the season? Like, let's go back to the playoff trust meter. DJ Moore, Rome, Keenan, Swift, Caleb. Give me a rating for these guys. I'm all of them.
2 on all on the Bears overall. I think I would have to put a 2. I mean, we've seen a big shift down on DeAndre Swift ever since Brown took over as the OC, right? Like it's been way more passing for the Bears than it has been running. Continued again today. I think it was 24 pass attempts. I guess that would be, if you count all the sacks, 28 pass attempts, because 4 more sacks for Caleb Williams, who was already leading the league by 9 in sacks taken. So, or 8 or 9. So just a ton here. He holds on to the ball too long. DeAndre Swift, another 14 for 38. Just a bad game. Yeah. I mean, Odunze scored twice. That's awesome. When was the last time Odunze scored before this game? Do you remember? I'm looking at it.
Week the week Keenan Allen was out. What was
September 22nd at Indianapolis. That was his last touchdown. So
okay.
he had a 100-yard game in there. He's had 6 for 65, but every other game has been under 50 yards for him. So, I mean, we're not depending on Rome Odunze at this point. DJ Moore got 8 more targets. Keenan Allen had 5 targets, but these guys are not very trustable in this offense. The Bears are still a mess, specifically the O-line and Caleb holding the ball too long. So, yeah, it's hard to trust them and say, I'm definitely starting my Bears over whoever's on your bench.
Yeah, I'm kind of at that point. I've been playing Keenan in the last 2 weeks just because I've been strapped with some of these injuries and the buys, and then I went back to him today over Dave Njoku, and it totally burned me. So I'd rather roll out a second tight end in some leagues than have to trust them. So yeah, it's been a tough go, but we know the upside's still there, right? Like we saw it last week against the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, the offense can bow up and be awesome. Caleb Williams still has it in him to be good. It's just it is a coin flip as to whether it is going to work or not. It seems to not make a ton of sense. You would think it'd work better in this game than on short rests against the Lions on the road. So, and it didn't. So I don't know.
I was thinking we were going to get the dead cat bounce here too, and the Bears were going to show up and at least maybe cover the spread here against San Fran. They did not at all. San Fran rolled in this one with 38 points. George Kittle, 6 for 151 on 6 targets. He's been one of the best values all season long, especially at a tight end position that has been struggling. Jawan Jennings, 7 for 90 and 2 touchdowns. Egg on my face. I had a lot of people ask me this week, Jennings versus other people. Keenan Allen was one of them. I rolled Keenan, so I apologize about that one, folks. But how do we feel? Like, obviously, you're starting Kittle rest of the way. He's a 5 out of 5 on the Trustometer. Where's Jennings after this big game? And where is Deebo Samuel, more importantly? 2 for 22 through the air. Did see 5 carries for 13 yards. Might see more action in the backfield, but he has not been effective carrying the ball at all this season.
Yeah, I'm done with Deebo. I've had enough.
Would you cut him? Landmine him?
Yep, I would landmine him. I think he's done. We've mentioned a bunch of, I'd rather have Ray. I mean, there are a bunch of other guys that I would rather have right now than Deebo Samuel. And, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the contract extension. I don't know if he's been playing with an injury the whole year. I don't care. It ain't working, right? Like you can't find a role in this game with all of the running backs down. And,
right.
I don't understand, Jennings still awesome. Kittle back at it now that they're not in the snow. Guerendo, huge Christian McCaffrey-like day. Deebo is doing nothing right now for you. So, yeah, I've had enough of Deebo. Maybe I'm doing it too early. I know there's still a lot of talent there. He's not getting separation. He's not getting burst yards. He's not doing anything. So I'm done. I think everybody else is okay. Like if Guerendo is good to play, let's go with Guerendo. If not, I think Patrick Taylor could be your waiver wire pickup of the week here because it just, it's behind the O-line in the passing game. It's, not hard to run when you have a big path to run through. So I think that, you can plug in a Jag and roll with the Niners offensive line. So especially if Trent Williams comes back. So I think the rest of the Niners offense is okay. I was worried about the health of it. I think this shut me up and proved me wrong that I should not have had as much worry about this offense. But Deebo is another story all to himself. I'm done.
Rams, Miami, Detroit, for San Francisco rest season. So very, very appealing schedule. I know Miami's defense has been kind of tough on paper, but we saw today. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. And the Rams, same type of situation there. They were leaky, and Detroit's also been leaky as of late with all their injuries mounting up. So yeah, I think it's wheels up on Jennings and Kittle and whoever's in that backfield rest of the way. And Boggs has given us the green light to go ahead and landmine Deebo Samuel. Never thought the day would come.
Yeah, I think it's about time. I think he's done.
We got Tony in the chat saying, I'm hyped. I got to buy, and now I can rest my players for week 16. And that's why we do this, right, Bob?
Rest them up. That's right. Yeah.
This is why we're here every single Sunday night and all throughout the week on the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel to make sure that you guys are making the most of this fantasy football season. Not only do we want to help you win championships and cash and everything and all the bragging rights and all the everything that comes with it, but we also want to make sure that you're having fun along the way, because that's why we do this. We have fun. We have just the overall community that comes together every single season is so powerful. So want to thank everyone who rides with us every single week on this episode. That's going to do it for us tonight on the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast. If you are new, please subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. It is the easiest way to support us. Also, check us out on our podcast feed, wherever you're getting your podcast, and download the My Playbook app. For Scott Bogman, I am Seth Woolcock. Thanks for watching. Take care, y'all.